Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, Roundtable partner and sponsor, Tabak Law Firm. Tabak for the Payback is Tabak LLC. And today is Saturday, September 18th, 2021. September is National Suicide Prevention Month, as well as Hispanic Heritage Month as well. Make sure that you pay attention to those people who need help concerning the potential for suicide, and also honor those people of Hispanic heritage that helped to build this country. Our host is Cliff Kelly, the governor of Talk Radio. I'm his co-host, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega, the great of Scouts Honor Productions. And he's laughing in the background. Our panelist today is Monica Irelan Karas. She is a veterans benefits attorney with Payback Law Firm based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, with offices located across the USA. And one of the people who's working there with her is Lance. I am taking advantage of their services. I advise every veteran out there to turn to them. So Lance has been helping me a tremendous amount, getting myself on track concerning my own issues with the disabilities claims. Today's discussion is going to be about basics, financial steps to managing your monetary benefit check. And, this is the basics of making sure that you know how to control that money that's coming in. So thank you for Monica for joining us again. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you, Dr. Arnold?
Oh, great. Doing okay
good.
Today. Now that I'm with Tabak Law Firm. I'm
good. I'm glad to hear that.
Better already.
Good. I'm glad. I hope we can move it through quickly.
Okay. Yeah, so tell me, what about this? What should we know about these financial steps to managing our monetary benefits check when we do get it?
So I think it's very important, and I know it sounds very basic to a lot of people, but to have a checking account in place and even a savings account. I know that sounds like, of course, but you would be surprised how many people don't have checking accounts. The VA does not like to send you a paper check, for starters. They prefer to have direct deposit information on hand when you start your claim from the beginning. Okay. So if you don't have a checking account, routing and what's the word I'm looking for? Routing and the clearinghouse number for your checking account.
Okay.
If you don't have that on file with VA, it's going to take longer for you to get your benefit. They're going to have to cut a paper check. Oftentimes, if you get a large amount of a back pay, your bank won't even, if you go and open up a checking account with that check, a lot of banks want paper confirmation of exactly what that is for. If it's, something in the thousands of dollars, the bank wants to know that that's a valid check. So you're just slowing down the process for yourself if you don't have a checking account on file. So my advice to anyone listening that either has started a claim or is about to start a claim is to open a checking account, even if you don't have one. A lot of checking accounts, a lot of banks allow you to keep like $5 in a checking account just to keep it open. So even if you don't plan on using it, on an everyday basis, it's a really good thing to have in place. It's just to have a basic checking account. I know most banks have bankers that are willing to sit down with you and just set that up for you and walk you through the process, get you a checkbook, get you a debit card. And like I said, even if you're not going to use it, it's important to have it, not only for you to get your benefit, but if you've hired someone like me or an accredited agent, it also helps the process for me to help you. So that's a very important thing.
Yeah, because that account has the account number and then a routing number. And
routing number.
and it makes somehow my brain cell this click. But that's something that's really important because the bank has a responsibility to make sure that it's not money laundering or something else nefarious going on as well, right? Yeah.
So here's an example of something that happened recently to one of my veterans. Was I finally got my veteran rated. He got a really large back payment amount. He didn't have a checking account. So he was in the process of getting a checking account, and I was trying to kind of help him along the way of doing that. And in between depositing, and this was someone with no wife, no children, anything like that. He just lived with his mother. Between the check being issued and him either starting a checking account, I don't know what, he died. So that very, very large amount of money, we're not really sure where it is. And that is something that could have benefited his mother. Now, I would, at some point in the future, it may still benefit her, but that's going to probably be a 2-year process of unwinding. Whether he had a checking account, who is entitled to the proceeds of that. So obviously, God bless everyone. I don't want anyone to be in that situation, but you know, you need to think about your dependents. If you're in a situation like that and you have a wife or you have children, if you don't have a checking account, that could make things very difficult for them even to reach the money should something happen to you. And, you know, I think oftentimes people don't realize that having a will is very important, but sometimes the worst things that happen in life are when you become unable to act for yourself. Sometimes as far as the money goes, and I hate to sound like someone who just talks about money, but from an estate planning position, if you don't have a power of attorney or you don't have a joint checking account with someone or you don't have your house titled correctly, all of that stuff becomes very messy. And if you're incapacitated and you need someone to write a check for you to pay your mortgage or pay your car payment, so that while you're in the hospital for 2 months, your car doesn't get repossessed or you don't fall behind on your mortgage, those are things that are actually sometimes more detrimental than if you were to die and have to pass along your estate. The not being able to act is sometimes harder financially. So it's very important to have a checking account. You know, if you want to have someone joint on that checking account, if something were to happen to you, that they could leverage the money. There's all sorts of estate planning things that could go into this even further, but from a very basic standpoint, if you were filing a 526 EZ for benefits, you should at the same time be making a step to have a checking account and even possibly a savings account open at that time. It'll just make your life so much easier in the long run.
Yeah, you know, you touched on something that was really kind of interesting to me, Monica, when you said, in case you were incapacitated, you know, should people be also considering things, especially if they are, older veterans who are in, or veterans who are younger who just had some catastrophic injuries, thinking about potentially a power of attorney. We have a lot of people with traumatic brain injuries coming back, PTSD. Is that something that people should be thinking about? Who would I want to sort of oversee my affairs should I become incapacitated?
So things like that fall into kind of an estate planning umbrella, and that is a state-by-state thing. Here in Wisconsin, I do what's called Wills for Veterans, where I do that for free. It's a free service we do to our Wisconsin veterans. I'll do a financial power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney, a living will, and a will, or a last testament. And we do all of those things for free here. That is something that just kind of, to make a long story short, after 9/11, we saw that all these first responders did not have these kinds of things set up. And then we found that even though we were helping our first responders, we weren't helping our veterans with this. So here in Wisconsin, we do offer that free service. But to answer your question, Dr. Arnold, yes, and what you're asking about is called the financial power of attorney, and that is very, very, very important. I can tell you from a personal perspective of being someone's financial power of attorney, that document was more powerful than any will. After, I'm not really worried about we discussed my father passed. I'm not so much worried about the money on the back end. I was more worried about taking care of him and taking care of his affairs. And my father was considered diminished capacity due to dementia. So I was able to take care of his affairs through a financial power of attorney, and I thank God that I did that. So that is something to consider. I'm sure there's resources there in Chicago and Illinois that will help our veterans. I'm just not sure who they are, but we could probably do a whole segment on that.
Oh, yes, I'm sure, and we need to. but I just have to thank you, because one of the things that you advised me about is, don't give up. As a veteran, you get kind of tired of submitting paperwork, not knowing what the forms to fill out, what to do. And so it's really important to have an attorney in the process, I believe. It's becoming even more and more important, because it's so people to the novice, that returning service member who doesn't have that perspective, doesn't have that knowledge or ability to read through all these documents and thousands of pages of notes. You really need someone who has that professional experience to help guide you through that process.
Absolutely. And, the more we have our Gulf War veterans either becoming ill or they were ill when they came back, we have a whole different array of chemical exposure now that we're talking about that is really difficult. I mean, even the old chemical exposures are difficult, the old Agent Orange, the old Camp Lejeune. We have some guidance on that, so if you have a service connection that fits directly in the peg that they wanted to, if you have exactly the disease that they say qualifies, then that's a little bit easier. But then you get these off diseases. You have a kidney disease, but you don't have cancer, and so it's not presumptive because it's not cancer, and then I have to prove that. On the Gulf War, we don't really have these presumptions, and so you do need an attorney, because I need to be able to figure out what were you exposed to and what are the side effects of that, and I need to be able to do the research and sometimes find you an expert doctor that can talk about those things. And as far as Gulf War goes, Gulf War is a difficult thing. There's Gulf War illness, which is basically they don't know. So, but the thing with Gulf War illness is they don't want you to have a diagnosis. So if you have no diagnosis, you might qualify, but then what VA is going to say is, sorry, you don't have a diagnosis. So you do need an attorney. It's very kind of a roundabout, cat and mouse game sometimes. But you are absolutely right. Stick with it. And, I have a veteran. I was very, very pleased this week. We had a hearing in front of a judge back in May. He got a decision rather quickly because we got it this week. And I think we're looking at about $120,000 of back pay for that veteran.
Wow.
Because he stuck with it. He stuck with his claim. So I'm not saying everyone would get that sort of huge windfall, but when you do stick with it, when they keep saying no, 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 and then they realize 5 years later that they should have given it to you 5 years ago, you may have a back pay award coming.
Yeah, and one of the things is also that I think that, service members, we have a tendency to be very honorable, and we have a tendency to want to at least project that we are independent, that we don't need any help, we don't need this, we don't need that. And those things that are given to the veterans are things that they deserve to get as well if they are suffering the consequences of the wounds of war, whether it's on a physical level or a mental health level. They need to feel that they are not just, asking for some handout or something like that. It's something that they're owed. And I've never seen a congressional member turn down a free sandwich in the congressional meetings, in Washington D.C. in the cafeteria, and and they feel entitled to that sandwich. So, the veterans who really need these services deserve it, just to make them whole again, and to try and it's an attempt to make them whole, because money doesn't always make you whole, but it can actually help you on that path. So. Yes, and the other thing to keep in mind, and sometimes this makes my job a little bit difficult, is each and every service member I deal with is a patriot. He is or she is someone who has served this country, and they're, for the most part, very proud of that. I do have people that come to me that have handled things that are classified, and they're not supposed to talk about it.
And that makes my job very difficult when I have a veteran who was exposed to something, but, the service member in them says, I can't talk about this. It was a classified mission or it was something classified that we did. And clearly there's no records I can get at because you would be surprised, maybe not surprised, how much stuff still is classified, especially as we get to the Gulf War veterans. So, I respect and I love that, all of our guys and girls out there, they did this for our country, whether they were, overseas or they were over here doing something. But, sometimes we get in kind of a point where it's like, well, you got to tell me what happened or I can't help you kind of thing. But I respect that. I completely understand, the honor that people have to their country. But sometimes that makes my job a little difficult.
Yes. And then it just sort of dovetails on something else you mentioned before. It was about the issue of corroborating statements. So if you have a unit or someone who's witnessed something happening, or even family members here at home, these corroborating statements to make sure that you're documenting that and that they're giving you the kind of paperwork you need as well. I know you're able to get records now from the VA system, so you can actually work on behalf of a veteran. But what are some of the things that people need to know about documentation and making sure that they are appropriately documenting the things that are affecting them?
Well, let me start by saying don't throw anything away. I know that especially as we get older and our parents pass and we go through their things and we find the old letters from when you were in country somewhere or perhaps pictures or perhaps your parents have your medals. Keep all of those things, but because beyond the buddy statements and beyond the corroborating lay statements, if you have, proof via a letter you mailed when you were in Vietnam, that is helpful. You would be surprised how many people were in country somewhere that their DD-214 does not reflect that. And then I have to prove that they actually were in country. The same goes for kind of our newer, later vets. If there are email chains, and I know they don't get at computers and they can't really get at text messages, but if by chance you were emailing with your spouse and you were like, oh, I got knocked on my butt and now I can't hear, those things are all very, very important. That kind of proof is the best kind of proof. So if you have anything like that, hold on to it. I get a lot of people that say, well, my mom died, we threw everything away. Don't do that. The other thing is yes, if you are in contact with someone that you were in service with that can corroborate your statement, a buddy that was in your unit or your battalion, that's very helpful. The other thing is if you were, let's say when you were in service, you were married to the same spouse you have now, and you called home or you wrote letters and you were like, something bad happened and I don't feel well now, or, I was on a march and I hit a hole and I twisted my ankle, and that person has a recollection of that, that's good evidence. Anything that's considered contemporaneous evidence is good. If you got out of the service, you got a wife, and your wife now says, oh, God, he snores all the time, but your wife didn't know what you were like prior to service, that's not as strong. If I have someone that knew you before, during, and after and can talk about the differences, that's a strong statement. So that's something that everybody should kind of think about if they need help. And I know I've mentioned this in the past, and just to briefly touch on it, the evidence requirements for VA, which is considered an administrative agency, is different than if you were to go, maybe you've been in family court for something, or maybe you've been in criminal court for something, and you know how you have to present evidence. Our standards are a lot more lax. The VA's job is to help the veteran, and I know a lot of our veterans don't feel like VA is doing that. But at the end of the day, the people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis at VA are trying to help our veterans. So, just keep that in mind.
Okay. And Monica, please tell people how to get in touch with Payback Law. And the phone numbers, the website, because you are a tremendous help. And as I was mentioning before, I'm starting to get a little bit of a peace of mind, having taken a step that you were recommending to look at. And so how can people get in touch with you and get this invaluable service?
Sure. So my phone number is 414-375-1735, 414-375-1735. Our website is Tabak Attorneys, T-A-B as in boy, A-K attorneys.com, and you can get a lot of information from my website. And just like Dr. Arnold said, when you start the process, you'll be hooked up with a case manager, and that case manager is going to figure out what we need. What are we lacking? Do we need to get your medical records? Do I need to get you to a doctor? Do I need these statements? And you'll be in contact with, it's actually a team of case managers. You typically deal with the same one over and over again, but we put our case managers in teams. Please call me, 414-375-1735. I'm happy to help you. I know we touched on a little bit about the financials of this, and I know Dr. Arnold and I are going to get into that a little bit more as the year progresses, and maybe it gets cold outside, and y'all are sitting and listening to us, or next to a fire or whatnot. But we're going to get into the financial side of this a little bit more, but it's, my job is to get you your benefits, and that's what I love to do.
Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much, Monica Irelan Karas, of the Tabak Law Firm, LLC, which is our sponsor and also partner. But thank you for what you're doing for our veterans. And I'm just so glad and so happy that we have an angel like you out here helping our veterans, because they deserve that and need it. And we have a lot of returning veterans from Afghanistan right now that are going to need that help. Tell your friends, give this number to people, and make sure that you have them connected when they get back. Okay.
And obviously, our Afghanistan veterans, please, anything that we can do to help you. It's been a rough go, but we're here.
Great. Thank you so much. We're moving on to the next segment. Stay with us at America's Heroes Group. And Arturo will be coming back with a nice, cool tune for me when we get back here.